Hey, welcome back to whatever episode of I'm Not Actually a Gas Station Attendant this is.
Hi.
We were talking last time about our show on our second tour in Bloomington, Indiana. So everything's, shitty and sucks, but it gets shittier and suckier as we move on. So we went to a pizza place in Bloomington, and then we got in our van and just drove to Little Rock, Arkansas, like overnight. I have no idea. Like, this was like one of those things, like in many tours, you find a place to crash and you crash the night. I don't know. I guess it was just to avoid driving in the summer, the heat, like on top of the heat, like we didn't have air conditioning in the van. We had a hole in the gas tank, so there was always fumes coming up through the floor. There might
and somehow we weren't used to like southern heat, which we're only getting to the tip of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So we got to Little Rock, and we went to Matt Worth's house. He at that point in time was running
File 13.
File 13, yes. I can't even. It's funny. I
can't believe I remember it, honestly.
Label name. But the label that put out many legendary records from Chino Horde and
mostly just Chino Horde, yeah.
No, there were Thumbnail, Chino Horde, so on and so forth. But anyways, yeah. We got there. I don't know. I think we just sort of crashed, us and Julia. And I remember one of my memories of that day was that we were all in his living room watching it was either 16 Candles or The Breakfast Club or something.
Yeah.
And Matt Worth's dad, who was really nice, just white, nice dad kind of vibe, came in and he's like, "Oh man, we have a band and a half here, don't we?" I think there was probably 10 or 11 of us in the living room at that point.
Yeah. Also, as mentioned in our previous episode, Nate, our friend Nate, who was briefly in the band and who had been, if you remember from the last episode, had been extracted from the band. Also, he showed up. He was just there.
Was he?
He was there. Remember, because
he might have. He was all over the place. He was there.
Somewhere. He was there, and he was wearing his lady friend's shirt. They switched shirts. That's why I remember that, because I was like, "Oh, you're wearing the short sleeve shirt now. That's nice."
Yeah, he was all over the place. There were a lot of people that would just kind of that summer would show up. And the Deadwood Divine played with us in Knoxville. I don't remember if they played with us in Little Rock, but they would just randomly be at the same place we were booked on a show we were playing.
It was kind of like Following the Dead, but it was just a bunch of bands. So you just constantly be running into everybody. Yeah. It was weird. It was great, but it was really weird.
Great. Yeah, it was great. This was probably the first point where I'm lying if I say it's the first point. But I was I was just already stressing about not a single one of us has money in our bank accounts.
Nope. Or a bank account.
Bank account. Yeah, I don't think I did either. None of us has hardly any cash on us. We were getting paid not enough to stay on
not even
tour.
In 90s terms.
No. When gas was $1 a gallon, if we were lucky, we might get $25 at a show sometimes, which was really brutal. Because also we were trying to feed ourselves off of the money we were getting paid at shows.
Yeah, and we had many people with us. Even after we kicked one of them out, we still had a lot of people.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think any of us had any cash on us. Oh God.
So to recap, no cash. Everybody's having relationship problems except for possibly Chris. Mm-hmm. Health problems. Mm-hmm. I get more relationship problems. Just financial problems at home, awaiting us on. When we get back from tour. it was, the list went on. I know that I just repeated myself several times, but seriously, at the time, it seemed like those things were mounting. Ooh. Those things were mounting to a fever pitch already.
That would be a great sound bite if we ever say anything that sounds shit talky. Just
I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll save that part. Yeah,
it'll be like a morning radio show. But anyway, sorry guys, that was we have a young boy cat and a older lady cat, and she hates him, and he loves making her mad.
This is what people are going to tune in for.
Yes, my cats. Well, so anyways, we were, I think we got to the show, which was at a gazebo in Little Rock, because for many, many years, the punk rock citizens of Little Rock were putting on squatted shows in a gazebo downtown in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yeah. It was pretty awesome. But I'm just like, fuck, we're going to get like $10 tonight. Because the shows were donation only.
Yeah.
And it was just brutal. Like I never was that dude who I never cared about making money. I just wanted to play music and meet people.
Yeah.
So it was like when I started worrying about that seemed pretty bad, because I was just like, I'm going to either starve or have to learn how to shoplift, which some of you were already doing.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah. So we were playing at this gazebo, and Joe sort of gave a speech before we played, and it was just like, it's really a gift to be out on the road with your best friends, your brothers, blah, 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 which it was very sweet of him, but it was like, it apparently tugged at everyone's heartstrings, and people were giving us like $20 for one of our 7 inches, which not worth that even now.
Oh, not even in these tumultuous times. No.
Yeah. Even in the Scrams Bible, we're pretty low on the value list, I guess.
Unless you're a Euro, probably.
Probably, yeah. So we got I think we actually ended up making $150 that night. So we had enough. Okay. And I'll tell you about some of the other stuff that happened, but real quickly, I was going to say, but we were still so stressed over money at that point. There was a show somewhere in Texas that we were booked on that we decided not to go to and just drive straight through from Little Rock. Well, we played another show in Arkansas. Well, we kind of did. We didn't actually
we'll get to that, but yeah.
But anyways, our plan, we decided we couldn't afford to drive several hours south into Texas and then several hours back up and go to Phoenix, which was our next show that seemed promising financially and just in general. So we decided we were just going to drive straight through the panhandle of Texas from Arkansas and through New Mexico, and there's some stories there too, and into Arizona. But anyways, so we played the shows. Everybody felt kind of good. It certainly renewed my faith in
it certainly
things
didn't sound good because it was a cement gazebo, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. The next morning, I don't even know how it started, but you get on tour and you start annoying people. People start annoying you. Ian and I got into it over a Carcass of all bands. I had a Walkman that I brought on tour with me because I didn't want to listen to Palace Brothers or Moss Icon over and over again, because that seemed to be, am I wrong in saying, Ian, that was kind of the thing everybody was into in the band, with the exception of me at that point?
I don't think Joe was into it, honestly.
Palace Brothers? Okay.
No, I think it was just Chris.
But Graham and Chris.
They fucking loved it. I just learned about Palace in California when we took that trip out to San Diego before we went on tour. So yeah, it was a new thing, and there was a couple songs that were like they were stuck in my head and it was fine, but yeah, they were really. Chris loved Viva Las Blues. I remember even before we went on tour, he was way. Is
that the one with the
album.
red cover?
No, it's the one with the kind of cardboardy cover with the sad jaguar or whatever it is. I don't know. Yeah.
Really wait, the red one I'm thinking of actually, I think a Polvo record, anyways, but which. They do not sound alike.
No, they don't. No.
But, as I've grown older, I've learned to appreciate, especially living in Louisville, I've learned to appreciate Will Oldham's music. But yeah, so anyways, I don't know why, like, I somehow was talking about, like, Carcass, and you were like, I don't even remember, but you made some sort of, like, kind of catty comment, and that turned into this huge argument where we're insulting each other personally. And I think I got super pissed and threw my toothbrush at you.
A toothbrush, yes.
And you punched a hole in Matt Worth's wall.
In his parents' house wall. I was so mad, and I just wanted to walk out. Yes, I walked out, and I didn't know that my fist could do that. But I punched an Ian-sized fist hole in the wall, and I marched downstairs and probably scared Matt Worth's giant football-shaped black cat for the 5th time because that cat was scared of everybody. I walked to the van. I grabbed my little suitcase and whatever other personal effects I had and walked. Not that far away, but around.
We found you at a playground like 2 blocks down the road.
Yeah, like around the corner. Just walked down, sat on my suitcase, and was like, "Why am I even going to do? What the fuck am I going to do?"
And Chris and Joe sort of like. To their defense, I mean, not that we've really dogged on them at all, but like, there were times when it felt like, to be quite honest, as happens in young bands, like most of the time it felt like it was me and Ian against Todd and Chris, or Joe and Chris.
Yeah.
And Joe and Chris were very much at that point committed to, and Joe was always the peacemaker, but Chris also became a peacemaker at that point in time. And I remember him just being like, man, like, you guys are cousins and you've known each other forever, and this, you shouldn't be acting this way towards each other, which was true, but it was just like really shocking, I guess, to hear it from Chris. But yeah, like, so we got past that argument. And
real quick though, the thing actually, what it kind of boils down to, without getting too into it and personal, is I brought my girlfriend at the time on tour. There was already bad things going on with that relationship. There was already bad things going on with her relationship with you guys. Nobody really wanted her there. She was very not nice. I'm trying to be, as tactful as possible, but
she was an unpleasant person.
She was a very unpleasant person, and I was dealing with that in my own way, and she's telling me stuff. I'm getting stuff from the outside, so quite honestly, I just wanted to walk away from all of it. Like, none of it was good at the time. So that's kind of where the tension was really, like, getting pulled in several different directions. And we're just trying to fucking get through this, already. When we've only played 3 shows, when we're already just like, okay, fucking, we're not even in California yet,
Well, I think it was like, probably that was probably our 5th show or something like that.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it. It felt like
it was very early on. But so I guess we patched things up enough to get back out on the road.
Oh, by the way, before we even got to Arkansas, I think several people asked us hey, where are you going next? We're like, Arkansas. They're like, dude, the water tastes really good there. It's the best water in the country, which was a weird thing, and it did taste good. It was good water.
I don't remember. I don't think at that point in my life I was drinking very much water. I
don't think any of us were. Yeah. But it's true though. It was good.
But so we had a show kind of booked in what's the name of the town in Arkansas? It's the only other it was where I think Bill Clinton was possibly from. But anyways, we were booked on a show there with Full Service Quartet, I think.
Wasn't it Shake Ray Turbine?
Shake Ray Turbine. You're right.
And wasn't it supposed to be outside as well? I feel like, or at least we went to a show or something that seemed.
We went to a show that Shake Ray Turbine was playing.
Yeah. Okay.
In. Still looking up. God damn, this is really difficult. I don't know. If anyone knows, let us know. It doesn't really matter. It was another town. Anyways, like we drove through the Ozarks to get there. We showed up at it was a small house, man. Well, yeah, but before that, the show that Shake Ray Turbine was playing was...
yeah, that was like a...
It was in a huge Coliseum type of thing, yeah. And I don't know if we were supposed to play that, and then it got moved to a house because cops, or... But anyways, we ended up going to this house. We were going to play with Thumbnail. We were playing at a house in this small city in Arkansas. And I guess the cops showed up or something. Yeah, they
did.
And
there are several memories about this, but I'm sorry. I just want to... Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I just... So I think we drove there. We didn't get paid anything because...
The cops showed up.
But, and I'm sure that... Yeah.
We were actually talking about this kind of sort of off recording about how bands, like, their image either changes or that it's not what you thought it was, et cetera, et cetera. And on our first tour, we met those Thumbnail guys. And did we see them at all live after that? Aside from this show, did we see them? I don't remember. I don't think we did.
They played Kalamazoo once, but I wasn't at that show for some reason. Fayetteville. Fayetteville was
Fayetteville. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. But so yeah. we I remember, like, when we initially met them, they were just like, they were nice dudes, and they were kind of like dorky dudes. And then at this show, first of all, it was a very small house. Second of all, it was like the old small house, and the floor was just bowing while they were playing. Like, it was just like kind of bending under the weight of all the people that were there, because there were a lot of people there. And the second thing, again, as far as image is concerned with bands, they all had solid colored T-shirts on, I remember, that were tucked in, and they all had like a belt buckle that was sort of like an ironic sort of belt buckle, but like everybody had a different cool belt buckle. I remember there's like, I got a skull and crossbones, I got a cat, and I, whatever, I don't know, but like it was funny to see like how much they, that happens. I mean, we had different dyed hair at the time too. And another thing, and I'm going to go ahead and say this and go ahead and I'll throw in the cat sound, because I'm going to talk a little bit of shit, but it's something that I will never forget about this show. And I don't even remember the bass player's name of that band. And I'm not trying to talk shit on you, dude. If you're listening, I doubt you are. But there was a girl in the audience. She had physical features that normal dudes would look at. And that bass player did not remove his eyes from her chest the entire set. And he was kind of short too, so it was like he was just like, seriously, it was like kind of embarrassing I was like looking at him and looking at her, and I was like, damn dude, you're not even gonna try to not stare at her chest while you're playing? Wow. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It was just a memory that was like, it was one of those kind of shock things that, dudes are gonna be dudes, and sometimes it's not cool, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't inside. I think at that point it was just like...
Also, it was hot as fuck.
It was hot. It was Arkansas. It was humid as fuck. And I was just, trying to find any spaces I could to just have my own space, as we all were, I think. But, so we got to the show. I think, Thumbnail played their set, and then... and then we left. We drove across the panhandle of Texas, where we ran out of money. But the good news was Joe had a PA he had sold to this friend of ours by the name of Everett. And basically he told Everett, he's like, yeah, don't pay me right now, because we're going to call you from the road, and we're going to need you to to wire us money. Like he knew that's, and best case scenario, it was like when we get back, I'm going to need money. So
right.
So I think it was like $600 or something that he wired to us, and basically like Joe was very egalitarian about it, and we were very socialist, and we each got like I think $20 that we could go get food or whatever the hell we wanted to do with it, just so that we were able to keep our sanity. And I think you guys went to a thrift store and Carrie found a Boston belt buckle.
Yeah.
My money was spent on a pizza with no cheese on it in Amarillo, Texas. That's where it was. Yeah.
Right. And this is where we went to the thrift store, right? Where we, okay. So it's Texas. It's hot as fuck. It was classic. It was like a movie. We pulled up to this. I don't even remember. There was nothing around it, but it looked like it was an airplane hangar. This huge thrift store. It's dusty, and we all kind of shuffled in. I think at this point I was wearing slippers because I got rid of my shoes, and for some reason that pissed some people off. I don't remember why, but it did. So
it might have pissed me off. I don't know.
Yeah, we got annoyed with each other for the dumbest fucking reasons. So we went in there, and I don't know who started it. I'm not proud of it, but this is a story, and we got to talk about it. People just started putting shit on. They just like Chris put on a classic in 90s fashion, a jacket with a racing stripe on it because
didn't he also have a cowboy?
He put on a cowboy hat. I don't remember what Joe put on, but I put on a belt and I found shoes, and for some reason I put on a 90s like fake pleather shaft or a 70s like shaft jacket. I was in Texas, by the way. It's like 90 plus degrees and I'm wearing a fake jacket.
Well, so, and everything smelled like cow shit too.
And everything smelled, because that area, it smelled bad. So I think we did pay for one or two things, but for the most part, we're in Amarillo, Texas, where you will get fucking shot. I mean, because it's Texas, don't do that. It's stupid. So that was the dumbest place to shoplift. And that was one of probably the only places I ever did shoplift from. So we walked out with like extra clothes.
Well, and the shoes I remember that you bought were like these like
stupid. They
were like kind of dress shoes that you would like wear to your first communion type of thing. Like But you stopped wearing the slippers at that point.
I think I actually replaced the shoes with the slippers. I put the slippers on the rack, put the shoes on, and
I think you're right.
I paid it forward.
But the the best part I remember is a few days into Chris constantly wearing this fucking cowboy hat. I remember Graham saying to Christopher, there's going to be a time, as there was with Ian's slippers, when you are going to have to give up on that cowboy hat. Like, it was really bothering Graham. And honestly, it was me too, but I'm like, I don't have the energy to argue about cowboy hats.
It might have been a little too small, if I remember correctly. It didn't look cool. It didn't look cool like he was in ministry or something. It looked kind of dippy a little bit.
Well, it was some sort of like Stetson or something. I mean, it wasn't that nice, but yeah, it was really bizarre. Like, and he wore it. There's a picture of us in Hollywood at Grauman's Chinese Theater. There's a picture of us, and he is still wearing that fucking cowboy hat.
There's a picture of me in New Mexico wearing that fucking fake leather jacket in human.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, my mom might have it somewhere.
God damn, that's awesome. Well, so we like I said, we stopped in Amarillo. And we had enough money then to have gas to go to whatever place was next, which in this case would have been
Phoenix,
Arizona, which was a day or two before we even had a show booked. So we took our time getting there. We ended up in New Mexico, and we went to what is that site? The
Oh, Area 51 or whatever.
Yeah, Roswell.
Oh, Roswell. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so we went to a Denny's in Roswell, and I remember maybe Joe or
It was
Chris
Joe. It was Joe.
asked the waitress if she had saw any UFOs, any flying saucers or whatever, and she took a very pregnant pause and then just said no, and like he took that as her being like, oh man, there's this is a government conspiracy. She can't talk about her experiences with aliens. When in reality, I think she was sick and tired of people asking her if she saw a flying saucer or any aliens.
Right. She was being really nice, and then Joe asked that question, and it just her face just fucking dropped. She's like, no.
Yeah. But he took it as like, oh man, there's things we don't know about. They're doing things, and in reality,
they're gonna get you, man. X-Files.
So, and I don't remember if it was after this, but we drove through. We decided because we had plenty of time, we were going to go see Billy the Kid's grave, which we did. Was it after Roswell? I feel like it must have been. Yeah, it was weird. Remember. It was weird. Like you know what? It might have been before. But we drove through all these like areas in the Dust Bowl. I mean, it literally looked like scenes out of Grapes of Wrath. Like it was just like dilapidated windmills and just so much weird shit. And I think we had taken some of the money that Joe had from like his PA sales to install a car stereo. We bought a car stereo, never had it installed.
Yeah.
We couldn't figure out how to install it.
Yeah, because you got to have a pro do that. It's not, you don't just like, you just plug it in. Like, no, there's like battery lines and shit that's very important, Yeah, it's not easy.
Which, that made the trip also, I think, harder for most of us because we didn't have even a boombox in the van as far as I remember that tour.
Yeah.
And, so it was like we couldn't just listen to music and enjoy the drive. It was like just you either slept and took in, fumes from the gas tank, or you like just kind of stewed in your depression. It was
mostly that. Yeah.
Yeah. But so we went to see Billy the Kid's grave. There was a museum attached to it, but it was closed. It might have been like a Sunday night or a Saturday. I don't remember. But anyways, it was out literally in the middle of nowhere. Like it was a dirt road.
Yep.
And we went, and then we just kind of parked there for a while. And there was a 4x4 that kept speeding up and down the road, which, it kind of gave off some like Deliverance sort of vibes. So I guess we all got spooked and left. And and then we went to Roswell, and I think we might have slept at a rest stop.
That sounds about
somewhere
right.
in the American West. And then we showed up in the morning to Phoenix, and
at Mike Genz's. Was it Mike Genz's house?
It was a giant. It used to be, I believe, a car shop. It was like a mechanics.
Oh no, it was one of those storage spaces. What it was? Yeah, because that's I think that's still to this day the Phoenix staple for venues and practice spaces. It's just random ass storage. But
there were people that were full on living there. They had a stage built in the middle of the floor. I remember coming in. It was like I remember pulling into Phoenix, Arizona, and looking at like one of the digital clocks / thermometers that they have on the sides of highways in the cities. I think it was 7 a.m, and it was already 98 degrees.
Yep.
It was brutal. Mm-hmm. It was the most miserable heat I had ever experienced in my life up to that point, I think. Yep. But we did that. Like we pulled into Phoenix and we showed up at this spot, and it's probably not much cooler than it is outside. I don't believe they had air conditioning. Yeah, it was fucking weird. And I remember like there were people asleep on this like stage in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
Like I guess it might have been the coolest spot in the building possibly. And it was carpeted, so it was kind of comfortable. So we got there, I don't know, we just kind of milled around. Some of us might have slept, I don't even remember anymore. And then I think we went to, what's the upscale suburb of Phoenix? Is someone
like
who
Scottsdale?
There? Yeah, I think we went to Scottsdale to some young woman's house who was she was always she was a kind soul, as I recall. She just was always wanting to entertain bands, and a lot of the bands were kind of dicks to her, which was shitty. And as far as I know, I think she killed herself several years back.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely no disrespect, and I hate to say this, but I don't even remember her name anymore. I had kind of like interacted with her via mail, but it was so long ago. Anyway, she lived in a like really nice like planned like gated community type of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think me, Joe, and you might have been, I don't think you were though, but like me, Joe, Matt Weeks, who was living in Phoenix at the time, and Eric Kane, who was also from Detroit and was living in Phoenix with Matt. They were both working at a Kinko's, I believe. But anyways, we all kind of jumped into the community pool, and some like retiree comes running out and was like, you're not authorized to be here. Get out of that pool. And we tried to tell, it was like, oh, it's, whatever her name was, said we could. It's like, I don't care what she said. Get out of the pool or I'm calling the cops. It was it was so weird. Yeah, so anyways, we did that, and I think that we ended up going to a Ralph's, maybe. Is that the grocery store chain in Arizona?
I don't know if it's there.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It doesn't matter.
It was a grocery store, and we bought pasta. Bought pasta and sauce. The sauce wasn't vegan. It had like cheese in it, so I ate just dry cooked pasta. But it honestly, at that point, I was so like not eating very much that it actually tasted really good.
Yeah.
So, and then we played the show. Oh, who all played? It was Anna Sarka. I don't think so. Anna Sarka, maybe Palaka, because they definitely played some shows. They might have been there. Anna Sarka definitely played. So did... There was this band from Phoenix. I want to say their name was Jeremian, Jeremin. They were kind of like metallic hardcore. They played. And I don't even remember. There was a joke, because I think that Mike, King of the Monsters, actually
Mike Enns,
booked the shows. Yeah, and he said there was, like, I think he joked around that there was going to be a limited, like, Kleenex screen printed Kleenex flyer for the show.
Yeah, because he was that guy that made those jokes.
But it was definitely us and Anna Sarka. Julia definitely played. I feel like it was a kind of a stacked lineup, but I just don't remember who else played.
I swear it was Plotka, because were they only a 2-piece? No,
they were like a 4-piece, but they did the same move that we did, which was playing on the floor.
And they kind of like destroyed all their stuff, or they made a big mess too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, because I remember somebody played on the floor, and they jumped on the drums and did all the stuff, and that was like their finisher. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we even played on the floor of that show. We may have.
Yeah, because the stage was like a foot tall.
Yeah, it was like literally just like 1 or 2 feet, to where like if you had a packed venue, which it was probably no, it wasn't, but it was probably one of the more well attended shows on that tour we played. I think I want to say there was probably 50 people there.
Really?
I mean, this is history through rose-colored glasses, so I could totally be wrong, but that's the way I recall it.
It was probably more well attended than the last. Like, there's a few shows. I mean, that Bloomington show and the wherever else we played, where it was like literally 3 people. Like, so,
Knoxville was horrible. I don't even know that we got paid anything, or if we did, it was like $10. Right. It's like, oh, thanks, we can put a half a tank of gas in our, But not to sound unappreciative, because no one was making money.
No.
Then no one promoting the shows was making money. They were losing money just the same as we were losing money. So I appreciate that, but it still sucked. So we played that. I think like we were getting along in that moment in history. I think we did have another one in like heavy talks, and I believe that the problem that I was being looked at as being sexist because I had just recently lost my virginity, and I talked a lot about how much I wanted to have sex with my girlfriend who was back home in Michigan.
You had a dream, and it was and you told us about it, and it was something about like a Mexican guy was like, should I say it?
I don't care. I'll say it. Just, I don't remember it, so if it's bad, you can all send it.
Right? Okay, fine. It was like, please give Rich some pussy, like, and you.
Oh no, that was Joe. That was Joe that had that dream.
It was.
Yeah.
But he did say Rich, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
Because I was talking about it so much.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah,
and you know what? Again. And I'm not just trying to shift the blame, but that kind of came from the other person. And I was like, yeah, which was stupid. I was like, yeah, he's being sexist, and then which was stupid. But
I mean, I don't know. It was what it was. It was kind of just what 20-year-olds talk about, I guess.
I mean, we came from a bunch of people who like to jerk off a lot and talk about it. So it's like it's really not that far removed from that. It's really fine.
No, and I mean, to be quite honest, the fact that I was, having sex was quite impressive to me, and I wanted everyone else to know just how impressive it was.
And that's almost how everybody feels, no matter who you have sex with. You're usually like, you know how awesome that is, and you want to talk about it, which is totally fine. But
at that age, again.
At that age. But tensions were still kind of, even though things were okay, things were still a little heightened, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we were, I think, as I recall, there was some like photos being taken outside of the venue before we played, like kind of like staged photos.
Oh.
Yeah, I wonder if, oh man, she doesn't have them, I'm sure, but yeah, she took them. Anyway, so we played. I don't know how much we got paid. I remember that we were given a bag of bagels. And,
yes, I think Mike Gens gave us that.
Yeah, he gave us a bag of bagels and a tub of tofutti cream cheese. And as I recall, I ate all the bagels and all the cream cheese. I definitely ate all the cream cheese because everyone else was just like, I don't give a fuck.
Right. Well, I mean, and you had to eat the unadorned pasta, so, it only makes sense.
Yeah. So then I guess we got in our vehicle and drove to yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
We drove straight to California, which really wasn't that far, but when you're young and you've never been to that part of the country, it felt like it took forever.
Yep.
We showed up in Huntington Beach, again, probably at about 7:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And I remember, like I said, when we got to Phoenix, it was 98 degrees at 7:38 in the morning. It was 70 degrees in Huntington Beach and breezy. Yeah. It felt like heaven. I mean, it's, anyone who goes to Southern California, especially, by the ocean, it feels perfect. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, no matter what time of year. So, so we got there. I think we all kind of tried to sleep, but couldn't sleep in the van. And we went to, what was that record store? Vinyl Solution, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And then you guys went swimming in the Pacific. And I remember I was I was wearing a pair of like purplish blue corduroys that I had cut into shorts, and I remember like being like, okay, I'm gonna go swimming, and I started walking into the ocean, and a wave hit me, and salt water like kind of spilled into my mouth.
Yep.
I was like, fuck this, I'm going back and I'm just gonna lay on the beach.
Yeah, we we had no idea we're used to Lake Michigan, which barely has, if any, wave. There's no such thing. It's just kind of wavy. But this was, undertow was...
It's gentle lapping, generally speaking.
Right. But undertow was not in our language at all. And I remember, first of all, we were the palest people in the vicinity, probably in the entire county. And we just charged into the water, and we were so excited. And I immediately got sucked under the water and got a mouthful of fucking rocks and got really scared because it was like gnarly. And so then we were on guard. Then I remember, because we were standing in the water, and we were like, whoa. And like Chris is like, was screaming. I think he was kind of playing it up, but he was like going, oh my God, and just like screeching. Like when the waves are coming at us like a little kid. It was really funny. And I mean, I'm not making fun of him. He was just doing that, and it was funny.
I mean, that's a good memory for sure.
Yeah. I don't think we lasted very long in the water. We're like, all right, I'm already fucking exhausted. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, well, you couldn't sleep well in that van.
No.
So it was just like, yeah. I mean, I think we were functioning on maybe a couple of hours of sleep at that point.
Which, being on tour, that's what you do anyway, but it was only a couple. Usually it's like 4. This was like, yeah, I got an hour and a half. Good enough. And thankfully when you're 19, 20, that's fine, but oh boy.
Yeah. But so we played this public library in Huntington Beach, California.
Which is magical.
It is.
Also, you can see... there was I won't spoil that part, but there is a Jenny Piccolo performance at that venue. I think 31G might have used that clip, but it's the one where oh God, what's the drummer's name? Is it Al?
No, it's
Al's the bass player.
Al's
Dave?
the bass player. Dave, yes.
Dave. Which Dave. Just for reference, like if you want to see it, like he's like, this is for all the punks and skins out there. Like that's the video. That's the library that we played at. And it's, I don't know how they got that. I don't know how they finagled the public library to let bands play there, but they did. And that's one of my favorite memories is like, I remember sitting before the show, just pulling out like a giant R. Crumb anthology and like flipping through that while looking out at like beautiful water and shit, like while we're just waiting to start. It was magical.
Well, so Carp and Guyver One also played Julia, I believe.
And Julia.
Yeah, I think it was our last show with them, like tour.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was us, Julia, Carp, and Guyver One, and there is video footage of Carp at that very show.
Yep.
And Carp was always good.
We can be seen in the audience, I think, somewhere. I have a great memory about that, and that is in the video. I don't know if that video is still up. I got to go look for that to see. But this was also a weird tour. Oh, you know what? But when my girlfriend at the time and I went to San Diego, we discovered Royal Crown Draft, which was a cola that I don't know what made it draft, but they basically put it in what looks like beer bottles. It looked like a beer bottle.
It was very ornate.
It was great too. It was really delicious, and so we were hooked on that. And by the time we got back, we were super stoked that we could like finally get that again. And I remember I had a bottle of it. I was so excited to see Carp, and I was standing right in front of Chris, the guitar player of Carp, and I had the label kind of facing away from me, and he's like, what, 'cause they're from Olympia, and he's like, what is that? And he started like rattling off a long list of beers, and I like turned the label around. He's like, Royal Crown Draft, and I think they started playing Bacon Industry, like, and it was like the best thing ever. He just fucking started the riff, and I was just like, ah! I was so excited because somebody talked to me from Carp. I was like, oh my God.
Well, and I remember one of my memories from that show, like this. To be clear with anyone listening out there, this is probably the peak amount of joy that we got on this tour.
Yes,
this show.
Absolutely. Yes.
Which is sort of weird to say. Like, I mean, we had some, not very many, but we had some good shows. But it didn't matter. We weren't even that, like, well received. I mean, we did okay at that show, but, like, it was just like we were seeing people that were friends of ours at the time that we hadn't seen in, well, you'd saw them in a month earlier, I guess. Right. But, like, I hadn't saw them in, probably 6 months or whatever it was. And, it was just really cool. But what I remember is Eddie from Guyver 1, I think he had his little kid with him.
Yeah.
And so he's holding his toddler with these just gigantic earmuffs.
Like, those like gun range earmuffs, yeah.
Mm-hmm. While, Carp is playing louder than anyone should be playing. But, I just remember, it was a good show. It was that's all I can say about it. It was a good show.
And again, I'm not dropping names, and I'm not, like, bragging or anything, but, like, as we were loading out, Jared from Carp, like, was like, hey, man, that was a really good set. What was the name of your band? And I was, like, fucking over the moon. I was so like, that's the second person to talk to me. Like, oh my God, that was like the most starstruck moment for me, which is, it's silly, but it was, I can't help it. I was,
and I think happy. Like, who was the drummer? Scott. Okay. Yeah. I remember it might've been that show, or it might've been one of the show that Carp played in Kalamazoo, but they had finished playing and you walked up to him and like made
growled
this really awkward, like,
Yeah.
And like he was super like great. Those dudes were nice dudes.
They were
I mean, I didn't know them on a personal level or anything, but yeah, they were cool.
That's a really embarrassing memory. I was so excited. Sorry, now we're gonna go off on a tangent about Carp, but like I drove 35 minutes from my job as a projectionist at a movie theater in Allegan, Michigan to Kalamazoo as fast as I could to catch Carp's set, and I did, and I was so happy. And like I was so excited. Like no bands ever made me feel like that before. And like when Scott walked by me, I was like, "Yeah!" And I think he was kind of like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Well, I remember they did the first time I saw them. I think I was the one that had exposed them to you. Like I saw them in a basement in Ann Arbor, and they pulled the Melvins move where they basically tried to like play as long and as loud as possible to basically drive people out of the basement.
I mean, they when at that Comic Cafe show, they played "Get Your Hands Off My Cake," and they played for like 12 minutes, and then put their guitars down, let them feedback, took the mics that they were singing in, stuck those up against the amps too, and then just walked away. So it was like, which was amazing, by the way.
Yeah, by the end of that set in Ann Arbor, I remember it was me and our friend Steve Kenny and our friend Tim Hayden were the only people remaining downstairs watching them at that point.
Tim Hayden also did an amazing intro for Carp at the Comic Cafe show where he just sat in a chair and did some sort of wrestling spiel. It was amazing.
He had done some some classy Freddie Blassie shit. But so we played and whatever. Like I said, it was a great memory for, I think, all of us. But, like, I don't think, like I said, that we, I think people were like, oh, you guys are cool. It's good.
Yeah.
But, like,
it's a California
everybody
response.
was there. Yeah, everybody was there for fucking Carp, I don't think anyone was there for Constantine or Guyver 1 for that matter. But I remember that we had a flat tire. Like, I think we had to, like, basically limp all the way down to San Diego from Orange County in a van and basically we had some sort of signal set up with the Guyver 1 dudes. It was like the Guyver 1 dudes, I think, were driving ahead of us because obviously we had to follow them down to San Diego. But like, they're like, all right, something goes wrong. You flash your high beams at us. And I think we basically made it to San Diego, just like I said, limping on a tire that was losing air pretty progressively. We got there, and I think we all went up into the apartment that Justin Pearson and Eddie from Guyver 1 and a cast of others. Eric Allen from Unbroken and Swing Kids and Struggle, and R.I.P. And a friend of ours, Thor, and a friend of ours, Brian, all lived at.
And the guy from Spanacorzo.
Oh, John Brady?
Oh, yeah, John Brady. Jesus Christ, yeah.
There were a lot of people. There was
a lot of people. It was
and most of them were on tour, or like Eddie was always staying with his baby mama. So it was like... But anyways, I remember someone actually slept in a like weird cupboard space in that house.
That was the singer of Spanacorzo. I forgot his name, but yes, he's in the off the kitchen. Yes, he slept in a closet. Yes.
Yeah, he had like put in some like futon mattress. It was a very oddly shaped, and I think he probably had to climb in one side and get out the and just kind of snake in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways. So we got there and we all went up, and it was probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 in the morning, and we all just fell asleep exhausted. And in the morning they woke up and got the tire fixed. But that was the only issue we had with that vehicle the whole
surprisingly
tour. Yeah. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like we stayed at that apartment house for several days.
Yeah, we definitely did. Yeah.
There was some, I think that there was a woman, it was kind of like, it was an apartment, like it was I want to say a duplex or something.
I don't know who lived downstairs, but they all...
No, there was one of them was that woman. I don't know. I don't remember her name. You might know.
Was it Maria?
Probably. Possibly. She was like, I think Marie's the right name. Like, she was Latinx woman. I believe that one of her claims to fame was she dated Zach De La Roca.
They only held hands.
Oh, they only held hands. Whatever.
That was the joke, but that's why it was funny, because I think people were giving her shit. She's like, we only held hands. That's funny.
Well, and you know what? That says something about Zach, too. He's a sweetheart.
Yes. And that woman was very nice, too, by the way.
She was.
Very accommodating and super nice.
She took us for a walk around San Diego, is what I remember.
Yes.
Like, she took us, and we just kind of, I don't know. She was nice. She was a nice woman.
Lived next door. It was crazy because they all lived in this house upstairs. She lived next door, and I think Jimmy from Guyver One, Locust, and later on the album Leaf and whatever else. Tristeza, yes. So thank you. Lived next door by her too, and then or maybe it was behind him. But then like Bobby from the Locust lived behind him, so like they all basically lived like within a feet away from each other. It was kind of funny.
It was kind of like Kalamazoo in that sense. I mean, we all lived within like, for the most part, 3 to 4 blocks of each other.
Yeah, on a giant hill. By the way, those hills were like
I forget the name of that. I forget the name of the neighborhood.
Hillcrest?
Maybe that's right.
Or Hillcrest might have been the next one over. I can't remember. But
Golden, I feel like...
Oh, yeah, Golden Hills?
That might be right, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure also there was maybe not quite like an insane asylum, but it was definitely like a home for mentally like... Not mentally challenged, but like mentally disturbed people across the street from that house too.
What I remember about that time at that place that we stayed was that we watched a lot of Misfits videos because Brian and Thor were huge Misfits fans, so they had like video footage from Why Be Something That You're Not, and
yeah,
all this like just bootleg shit, like the video for Brain Eaters, and then also, so it would alternate between that and them playing like the Shocker soundtrack. Like, Ryan I think like really liked
the early ECW too, like the really violent, like they had a lot of blood, just like wrestling, just beat the shit out of each other, and it was shocking at the time because I was, we were all used to like home, good old WWF where it was like clearly kind of fakey and shit, but this seemed really real and like disturbing. Like they were hitting each other with stop signs and shit.
God. Brian was such a sweetheart.
He was, yeah. I remember going to one of his apartments later on, and he had a huge Burzum flag, and I didn't know who Burzum was, but I was like, who's that guy with the fucking spiky stick in his hand? But he loved black metal. But
when he moved back to Phoenix when you were there?
I don't remember. Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, he did. I think he did. Yeah.
And then who was that dude? I think there was also a dude that lived at that place that put out a studio project you had done.
Oh, no. That was Phoenix.
He had like blonde hair. He was kind of a quiet, nice guy.
It's James Fella, yeah.
Yeah.
That was in Phoenix. That was a later on band.
Okay.
But also not, and this is, again, I'm not name dropping, I'm not bragging, but it is kind of like a speaking of Misfits. And I don't remember if this was before all these terrible events or during, because we had already been there. My girlfriend and I stayed there at the exact place we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. We'd stayed there a couple weeks before or a month before or whatever we went on tour. So like we already knew everybody and stuff, and we were already real buddies with them. But like I remember at some point, I'm not sure where, but Justin was like, "Hey man, do you want to play drums in my Misfits cover band?" Like he asked me that, and I think that eventually morphed into what would later be the Crimson Curse.
Probably, yeah.
Which I thought was kind of funny, but I was like, nah, I don't know what to, I don't know, and but I don't know. Also, at some point, I got in an argument with my girlfriend and sat outside at night on the curb because that happened. I mean, while all this was going on, everything was really coming to a fever pitch. There was a lot of like everybody was unhappy, even more unhappy, and Joe went to Tijuana by himself, which was sketchy. We were scared for him.
Yeah, it was the best move he could have done for sure.
So
he got there and back okay though. So
it was, yeah. I mean, it ended up being fine, but we were like, it felt like things were unraveling even more. And then we played the show.
You mean the show in that house? In that house,
yeah.
Yeah, which, by the way, if you're wondering, get an idea of what that space was like. The Crimson Curse video, which I'm sure you can find on YouTube. They released a VHS video of their Halloween show, and it was at that space, at that house. Anyways, I think Guyver 1 played before us. It was basically like Guyver 1 decided they were never going to follow us again. And truthfully, like, we were in our element when we played together in the Midwest. We were the cool band, I guess, kind of.
Right.
And, they were just a band from California, which people were excited to hear and see, but like, a very different sort of vibe. And our vibe didn't go great in San Diego. And speaking to the sort of spiraling out of control. I don't remember myself being in too horrible of a headspace then, but I could have very well have been. I just don't remember. But what I do remember is we played that set, and it was the most intense, long in between song explanations ever. And like, I think Joe brought up several times, "Oh, we're in San Diego," which is like this place that's all about fashion, and we're not about that, but we really like you guys.
Yeah, and he also said, he's also like, there's a person here that they're kind of the head of that, and I'd like to really have a discussion with them about that at some point. Did he? Yes, he did. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
well, and Justin was on tour. He wasn't even
right. He wasn't. Yeah, that's why he said it, because he could get away with that, and it was just like, I remember. Clearly.
I don't even remember, but I probably was like, man, that was brave. I probably looked at it that way, but holy shit, that was terrible.
Like there's some sort of fucking political, we need to have a sit down about this white belt thing.
But we all made such a big deal about it. And it was sort of us just taking what Kent McLeod was saying in Heart Attack and amplifying it 1,000 times.
Yeah,
right, it was such a big thing. And it really wasn't.
It wasn't. And we all had black hair. We all dyed our fucking hair black at that time.
Well, and I will say, real quickly, though, about in regards to I found at the time, Justin Pearson's stage presence to be very grating. But
I think was the point. But.
Yeah, it probably was the point. No hard feelings. He's always been really nice to me. But yeah, I think that was kind of a thing we were all talking about. Like, oh man, he's so obnoxious, which was, again, I'm sure his goal,
I mean, he was being punk. That's, and that's whatever your definition of that was his. And mm-hmm. I'm not like sticking up for him or whatever, but it's just like, that's what he was. So what? In this grand scheme of things, so fucking what, But,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, so I don't even remember him doing that, but that doesn't actually surprise me. But also, like, the way I recall this, and I could totally be wrong, and it's obviously no thing, but I feel like we were playing and Jose Palafox walked up and saw us, and Joe's like giving these like just long meandering, not even song explanations. It was just him like crowdsourcing therapy. It pretty much, I hate to sound like such a dick because we all kind of did that, but like he definitely was full on like, yeah, my girlfriend left me and I had a nervous breakdown. It was just like, wow. Like,
it was.
I remember it being like the in between song banter was so fucking long that I remember sitting on the floor while he was giving song explanations. It was that long.
And to be quite honest, like there exists a video of that Detroit Fest that we played, and his song explanations were already kind of long enough. I mean, I think we played a solid 35 minutes, and a majority of that was in between song banters. But that was in 1995 when things were like kind of okay, and by this point, man, we had to have been playing, playing in quotes a long fucking time.
I very literally remember that show being grueling.
Yeah.
Is the only word I can use to describe it. It was like, I think we were all, obviously, this tour we were all going through crises, but like, it was grueling. I'm just like, man, I mean, I agree with Joe, but holy shit, this is going on a bit.
Like, here's what it is, like, not to get into a whole like playing music thing, but I mean, like you get this out, you play this, even if it's a physical thing, if you're running around or if you're, whatever, you're hitting things or whatever, you get all that out. By this point, that wasn't even working.
No.
I mean, I get like, yeah, if like I was the guy who like wrecked his drum set and stood on the bass drum and did all that stuff and whatever. And
Joe was the dude who would jump up in the air and then fold his legs under him and land on concrete on his knees
and hit himself in the head with the mic, and pull his shirt over his head and lose one shoe, and like
the shoe thing always confused me.
That was amazing.
I wish there was some like really good video footage of him like spazzing and somehow losing one of his like low top chucks, because like I still don't know how it happened.
It was always one. Yeah. I was always impressed with how he could kind of do that cornholio thing with his shirt and just in one fluid motion, just get it over his head. And then there's pictures of it. There's pictures of him with his shirt like half off, like over his head. And there's just a hole where his face is. And he's just rolling.
I was so in my zone playing in all those shows that like, I remember after we broke up, this just wealth of pictures started popping up on the then nascent internet.
Yeah.
And I remember like there were pictures of Joe with his, what you're talking about, just like the shirt up over his head and folded around his head. And I remember talking to someone who saw us several times. I'm like, I never knew Joe did that. Did he do that? Did he do that a lot? And they're like, yeah, every show the shirt would come up over his head.
The only other time I've ever seen someone deftly manipulate their shirt into a fucked up sort of shape was the singer of Piss Jeans did that once when I saw them in Chicago. Like, as soon as the song counted off, he was out of his shirt, sort of, and like it was just twisted around his neck. I don't know how he did it, but only him and Joe are the people that I've ever seen that could like pull that magic trick. That David Blaine-esque, the DIY David Blaine.
God damn. Yeah, so him hurting himself horribly. I think one of the last times I saw Joe, I actually asked him, I'm like, do you skate anymore? He's like, no, my knees are shot.
Yeah, that's why.
You think?
Yeah.
I mean, all of our knees are shot. I haven't stepped on a skateboard in probably 10 years at least, but like, God damn, yeah, he bled for his art. There's no doubt about that.
Right, but I mean, again, it was getting to that point where this was not feeling good anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, no matter what in the past, at least you could get it out through the show, and you'd be like, mm-hmm. All right, I'm reset. Let's handle the next problem, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But that was not happening at this point.
Yeah, so what I remember good about that, not the show so much, but like after the show, I think the show ended pretty early, probably 6 or 7 o'clock at night. It was my one and only time at Fake Burger, yeah. Which was awesome. And some dude from Ventura came down. He actually, I think this is many years ago now, but like last I heard, he actually was a shit worker for MRR, which obviously that's probably not the case anymore.
Oops.
But like, yeah, his name was Scott. He was in that band Surface. He was a nice dude. Mm. And I don't know why, but he came down to see that show and stay at Justin's house. But yeah, we all walked, like, so we went and got Fake Burger, and then I think we drove to the beach and walked around the beach at night and saw a bunch of seals kind of just chilling on the beach, which was awesome to me. It was like, oh man, this is something I would never experience in Michigan. No yeah. joke, but, so that's, I guess, the good memories of it. I think we had a show booked in LA. The next show was supposed to be LA and we just didn't go. We were just like, we want to get to this fest in Goleta because it's a good show.
Oh, wait, was the JC story was there? It's not here?
That was
yeah.
the fest. That was
okay,
the fest.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, so we I think you weren't with us. I don't know if you were. I think you might have been riding with Guyver 1.
Yeah, at that point we reinitiated the taking separate vehicles.
Which is just makes sense.
Right.
But we stopped in LA we had a show booked in LA, but we decided we weren't going to do it because we wanted to get to Santa Barbara, Goleta, whatever you want to call it, yeah. and just hang out because there was no way in hell there was going to be anyone at that show in LA.
No.
I mean, honestly. But we did stop in LA, and there is a picture that is in the booklet of the Constantine Sincati discography, where it's many of us hanging out, posed for a picture in Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I was wearing a Quicksand shirt and had a bowl cut. And I think, like I said, Chris was wearing the cowboy hat.
Yep.
Yeah, so we hung out in Hollywood for a little bit simply because we'd never been there and wanted to see it. And then we got back on the road and went to Goleta Fest, and I laid in the back of the van because I felt sick. I had some sinus issues happening. Yeah, I think Disembodied and Joe Don Baker played. And at some point, I thought it was my teeth that I was having issues with. And one point I was like, oh, it's probably not your teeth. It's probably your sinuses. So another person from Utah that was kind of hanging out with us stole some like allergy pills from a Ralph's in Santa Barbara and gave them to me. Like just kind of like walked in. He didn't ask for any money. I assume he probably stole them anyways.
Yeah.
He was huge. He was like 6'5" and covered in tattoos.
Was that the kid with his sister, the twin sister?
Was she a twin sister?
They looked alike.
Shit.
I don't remember. They just both had black hair.
They were both very, very tall.
Very tall.
And they had
quiet.
a friend. Yeah, they were from like Ogden, Utah, I want to say.
Yeah.
And they had a friend with them. I don't know that she was into like stuff, but she was just there with them. And she looked like Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Like,
yep.
Yeah. I don't remember. I talked to him and his sister a little bit, but anyways, he was very nice, and he stole some allergy medicine for me, so that was very kind of him. And I think that our friend Scott, who later went on to be in Limp Wrist, he was kind of along for the ride with us as well.
Yeah.
And he bought me a thing of orange juice. It was really nice of him.
Yeah.
Like, I remember we were just sort of like the fest for the night. The show was done, and we were going to find some place to sleep. We decided we wanted to possibly camp on the beach. Somehow or another, Chris remembered. They found a homeless gentleman who told us about there was an enchanted forest that we could camp at, and he was going to show us the way. And so, like, I was a little bit skeptical. You were definitely not feeling this, like, meet someone we just happened to meet.
The motherfucker walked out of nowhere. He just, like, appeared. He's like, hi. And it's like, no, you don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and Eddie, I think, of Guyver 1, probably the most streetwise of any of us, had a bat that he was planning on using if necessary. But anyways, so,
I grew up with an overprotective mom, so my radar was always on danger alert. Everybody else, maybe not so much. So I'm not saying I was right, but like my spidey sense was going off, and I was.
No one knows, but it was definitely maybe not the best.
It was sketchy.
Yeah, like it could have made a bad situation way worse. Like, and I don't believe that it would have been. There were like 15 of us. I don't believe anyone would have been killed, but I do believe it's a possibility we could have woken up in the morning and our van was either gone or our
genitals or
our wallets. Not that there was much in them, but yeah. So he takes us to this place somewhere deep in Santa Barbara, and it's like, okay, park here.
Wasn't it? It was just like a regular old neighborhood, which was weird.
But it was on the ocean.
Right.
It was we were literally going to sleep on the beach that night. That was the plan. But anyways, as soon as we pull up, some guy comes out. It's like, hey, you guys can't be here. This is private property. Because I guess it was private beachfront, whatever.
Yeah.
Homeless man disappears. I think JC, I think was what you said his name was.
JC was taking us to the enchanted forest. Does that sound good to you? No.
Yeah, so he just kind of disappears, and Chris and Joe were very disappointed in you and how unkind you were.
Because I wouldn't shut up about it. I'm like, okay, enjoy having your throat slit. Like I don't even remember what I was saying, but I was like, just like vocally unhappy with this. Like, who the fuck is this? Why are you doing that? Chris turns to me. He's like, you're just ignorant, Ian. Like,
I mean, you probably could have handled it with more tact, but yes, I don't disagree.
Again,
with you. I certainly was a little.
But at the time, tensions were already like sky high, and we're all stressed as fuck. Like, now is not the time to go follow JC into the enchanted forest. That's all I'm trying to say here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm not to you, but I'm to them.
Oh yeah, but so we then Joe and Chris and several other people were disappointed in you and Eddie and how you had handled it.
I was not magical at all. I was not. Yeah.
So we drove back to where the venue was in Goleta, and I fell asleep in the back of the van. I don't know where the hell you slept, I slept in the loft, and Joe and Chris and a couple of other people in our sort of crew of homies had thinking of a good way to put it, had like I don't know.
They had a seance of their
ritual.
Own.
They had a ritualized thing that they did where it sort of, I guess they built a bonfire and they decided that what they needed to bring them close as brothers was burning their underwear. So they set their underwear on fire in a parking lot in Goleta, California.
Yep.
I don't know I really don't know what else to say about it. It was, one other memory from that. I mean, there's more coming, obviously, because this is where it all fucking explodes. But there was a donut place called Spud Nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole thing was they were donuts made out of potato flour. And they were vegan, reportedly. I think many years later, I found out that they certainly were not vegan, but that's what everyone thought and everyone believed. And so I don't think there was much in the way of food in Santa Barbara. I could be wrong about that, but maybe you get a burrito and hope that the beans don't have lard in them.
Right.
Or that the tortilla doesn't have lard in it, or you get donuts made out of potatoes,
I seem
which
to have
was
a memory,
really good. I remember eating one; it was pretty damn good.
I seem to have a memory where and I might be confusing this with Phoenix, but I remember there was a point where we went to a store. And Joe's like, we're getting pasta. That's it.
That was Phoenix. That was where I ate the dry cooked pasta.
Right, yeah. I remember my girlfriend was very upset by that. And that also really started to set off the they're all,
Not to be a dick about that, and I know that you agree with me, but it seems kind of odd that she would have a problem with the fact that we were all living very communally and had no money. There was,
no. I mean, it was not warranted at all. I mean, her response was not warranted, and it just added more discourse, and that's kind of like.
Well, and it might have been that she was just offended that Joe would even say it, but the truth is that, I think that it would have been possible if that wasn't an unspoken rule, then it would have been like, I want a chocolate bar,
right? Well, and so at this point, it was really there was a big wedge happening, and I think even at this point, we were at a store or something, and I saw them walking out, and I just turned around and walked away. I didn't want to be near anybody, man. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think that was Goleta, where I was just I just fucking heel turned and just walked away. And I think Joe even said he was just what the fuck is wrong or something like that, and. It just, at this point, it was... Yeah,
we all had frazzled nerves. I remember at that point, it was that day, probably a couple of hours before we played our set, there was a group meeting in
a field.
And it wasn't the first. It was the last, but it wasn't the first.
Yeah.
But there was a group meeting in the field, but right at the venue. And it was just kind of like, man, we're on tour. I know that things suck right now, but we gotta appreciate what we're experiencing. I mean, fuck, dude, we're here, and there's a mountain, a literal mountain right behind us. That's fucking awesome, and we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the band. Yeah. And and they weren't wrong. They
were not wrong.
Wrong. Yeah. But you were just, it was over.
I was done. I didn't want to hear anything about that. And, again.
But I think that the deal we had struck with you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the deal we struck with you was there was the next show we were playing was in Gilman. We were lucky. The first half of our tour was with Julia. The second half was going to be with Torches to Rome. Yeah. So we were, our next show is going to be at Gilman. And, so I think that the deal we had sort of struck with you is look, man, come with us to Berkeley, and, if you're still not feeling good about this, if you still want to go home, we'll pack it in. And,
right.
maybe it was even, we'll buy you a bus ticket. Maybe it was that we were going to get a drummer to sub for the rest. I have no clue what it was. But so that, that was our last band meeting. That night I remember playing kind of later in the evening. It was dark, and it was the vibe was really like the way I remember it. It was like the doors were open, we're playing on the floor, there were candles lit, the lights were completely down.
Yeah.
And there was a
heckler.
That asshole. I actually met him online many years later. He's still a dick. But there was a cool breeze blowing in from the ocean, and it all felt so, not to sound corny, but it felt magical. Yeah. But with that said, we played in the heckler. I remember Joe's in between song raps weren't quite as insane as they were in San Diego.
Right. Yeah. Things were cleared up a little bit.
I think he probably also was like, well,
he was in fest mode.
Hundreds. There's hundreds of people here. Maybe we don't go super deep down a rabbit hole on every mental health crisis that we're having as a band and as individuals. Yeah. But so I feel like we played a short set that night.
Well, it was cut short, quite literally.
It was cut short, yeah. I bought a cord for my bass that was neon green because I figured no one can say, "Oh, I thought that was my cord," and abscond off with my neon green.
It was pink.
Oh, it was pink. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we were playing, and you knocked over one of your cymbals, and it literally cut my cord.
No, dude, I just walked through my drum set. At that point, as I said before, we were playing, and it wasn't even like the part where I'm supposed to do that. We were playing, and I was just like, this is not feeling good at all. And I just walked through everything and just walked out. And as I was doing that, the ride cymbal fell over and cut your cord in half.
Yeah, and I remember you just said very quietly and kind of resigned, "I'm sorry." And I was like, in the very same tone was like, "It's okay."
Yeah, that's where we were at. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just I was done fighting and arguing. Yeah. And honestly, that was never going to be something that was going to drive me over the edge anyways. But it would have been the rest of that tour, had we done it, it would have been me probably borrowing a chord every show.
I mean, and again, I'm not trying to be defensive about but I feel like that heckler at the time, it wasn't magical anymore. It's there's a guy heckling us in the audience. This just all feels really bad. It just did not.
Well, so his name, I believe, was Tom. I forget his last name. He actually became a lawyer. That was kind of what he was famous for in California, is just heckling any band, some band that had kind of was known for dynamic parts. They'd be playing a part and go into kind of the, mellow part, and he'd be as loud as possible. Oh, so this is the quiet part.
Yeah. But I remember he yelled "Stop jerking off and start rocking."
Which is kind of funny, actually. But
at the time, it was not fucking funny.
It was not funny, but it was in retrospect. The thing I remember that was Joe. I think maybe Joe kind of fed the troll in the sense that he would respond and he'd be like,
yep.
"Fuck off!" I think Joe was like, "Fuck off," and the guy's like, "You kiss your mom with that mouth?"
Yeah.
And Joe's response was, "Yes, and she loves me very much."
Take that.
Yeah, at that point I was just like, oh man, Joe's losing it.
Seriously, that was also I know it's funny now, but at the time it was not funny. It was it feels like people are turning on us. It feels like this is just my anxiety ramping up, basically. But I don't think that was it. I think it was just that dude, he was known for being that. No,
dude.
I get it. I'm just saying, at the time, I was just that's why I was just this is not where. Which is, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's right at all, because at the time, I was just beyond fucking stressed, and I was just like, I just need to go out. And so I walked out. I mean, I walked out and didn't even pick my shit up, which is also a dick move, by the way, and went and sat in Eddie's van, in the Guyver 1 van, which, by the way, Eddie had a cool van. I don't know if anybody knows that, but
Eddie flames on it. It was really cool. And it was fast, as I recall. Yeah,
he had a fucking one of those, what are those called? Like, those speed, like
nitrous.
No. Like on the steering wheel, like it's actually illegal to have like those. It's like a knob on the steering wheel that you can like crank super hard so you can turn on a dime, because vans aren't supposed to do that.
Huh? I
can't remember what those are called, but it's something illegal. But he had that.
Yeah, it was cool, a hot rod van that he bought to be a band van. It was really odd, but it was it was awesome. But yeah, like I don't remember much about that night other than, well, I think I must have loaded my gear, and then I just sort of wandered. Like Joe was at Eddie's door, like, and he was arguing with you guys. So it's just like, fuck. Like, honestly, I don't remember, and I might be wrong. I'm not trying to say that, but I don't remember there being like I don't think I engaged in any of the argument. I was
it was
just kind of like, I think all the rest of us were just sort of like over it. Like, it was just like, I wanted to keep the tour going, Well, but with that said, I didn't.
Here's why. Is like, we were sitting in the van, and again, timing was bad on all of this. Like, as I explained, I was really over it, and quite honestly, I was really over being around my girlfriend. I was really being around you guys. I honestly didn't want to be around, like, even Eddie. It was embarrassing. It was kind of embarrassing to like be feeling these emotions and being around anybody. I just wanted to get away when it was impossible to do. So we're sitting in Eddie's van. My girlfriend's there, and she's commiserating, like bitching and stuff. And I'm just like, man. And then like Joe comes over, and
yeah, it was weird.
We've had discussions about Joe before, but I'm not going to sit here and like, talk about this stuff. But he was still trying to be diplomatic. Yeah. But at the same time, I also saw him as just being, and this is through the lens of a bad relationship that I was in. Like, he just seemed like he wanted something at the time. I'm not saying he did, but.
Well, I mean, I think he was very invested in keeping the tour going, which is why him and Chris both were very much like, and I'm not saying this is not me saying this is like a bad thing. I don't see that as being like a sinister agenda at all. Like, we all had worked towards this, and I think like the idea of giving up when we were what felt like this close to like,
sure.
It was like we were going to
go play Gilman, man. I always wanted to go to Olympia, Washington, especially in the 90s.
Did we have a show booked there?
I think we did, yeah. And okay. I was really excited. In fact, that was kind of in my brain one of those things, like we're going to get to Olympia, and it's going to be exciting because I've always wanted to be there. K Records, all that stuff. Like I really wanted to. That was kind of my like, okay, that's a goal to get there, But seriously, like at that point, it was all gone. It had all drained out of me.
Yeah.
And also, and again, I know I sound like I'm really like putting it all on someone else, but like this person that I was with, she had wealthy parents, and she could drop anything at the drop of a hat and just go do what she wanted to do.
Well, and I think, she had what I believe is referred to as borderline personality disorder. She was
sure, and but I hitched on to that, honestly, and that's my fault. I'm not saying that like I'm blaming it all on her. I hitched on to like, yeah, fuck it, I can drop. I mean, technically, you can just be like, fuck it, I can do whatever I want, and no repercussions and no whatever, and having to like have people rely, or you relying on other people. Is totally acceptable, which honestly it's kind of not. Well, so yeah, this mindset, of me, like at the time I was like, what I needed was space. and I had no way to convey that. And this was, it felt like minutes, it probably wasn't, but it was directly after this had just happened, like I just ruined our set basically. And I'm sitting there and I just wanted silence and I couldn't get that. And then I got Joe in my face, and as quietly as possible, I'm just like, no, man, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't handle this. I don't, I can't even remember what I said, but I really was just trying to be.
I don't even really remember, because I feel like I came to the van as it was like winding down, like where it was fine. And by winding down, I mean it was escalating.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It was to the point where it was like, okay, this is done. He's done. Fuck you. That that was essentially sort of the like.
Yeah, and so like I'm just saying, I'm just like I can't do this, which again honestly translates into I just need space, please just leave me alone. But all I could say was no, and I didn't want, at the time I felt like I just didn't want to do this anymore. And Joe got really upset. And some shit was said. I'm not going to recount all the shit that was said, but it was pretty rough.
I like I said, I don't remember a whole lot of it. I just remember it was
and I do remember it, and I'm not going to recount it because what's the point at this point?
Well, what I remember about that night beyond, we saw Man is a Bastard. I don't know if we had the argument before or after Man is the Bastard. It was before,
I think.
Okay.
Because I remember.
Yeah, I feel like it was this sense of like, at that point, almost like, as much as I wanted to continue on that tour, like there was this sense of like relief too. It was like, okay, we're all going to get in the van and we're just going to fucking drive 2-3 days to the Midwest. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching Man is the Bastard. I remember that Chris got drunk, and that bothered me because that basically put a huge amount of the responsibility of driving on both me and Joe.
Yeah.
Until he sobered up, and he was just like, I understand why,
of course.
But it just sucked because we knew we were all getting in a vehicle and going back home that night.
So yeah, like it ended without details. It ended real ugly to the point of where like I'm crying, my girlfriend is crying, Eddie is sitting in the driver's seat stunned. Like he doesn't want to fucking be there, and I don't blame him.
Poor Eddie, seriously, poor Eddie. Actually,
nicest fucking guy. He was really supportive, and I mean, there are other details, but like he was really fucking nice, and I hope he's still around because he was a great.
I believe
great
he is. Yeah, I believe he is. I've talked to a few people in San Diego I'm friends with who also know Eddie, and it's usually like, oh yeah, man, I ran into him at Comic-Con like a couple of years ago, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was I mean, from my standpoint, and I think that I was certainly bummed by it, but I think that obviously Joe and Chris were more bummed because the whole thing, we were like, we were at that point, we were going to finish this tour. We were going to record an LP for Council Records.
Yeah.
The plan was we were all going to move to California together.
Yeah.
And honestly, we probably wouldn't have lasted
made it that far. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we might have made it to California, but I have a feeling that like once we were in California, we would have drifted in different directions
easily,
too, because it's a big enough city to where there's so many different like scenes, that
there's something for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it was weird. It
was ugly. And then it ended up being like, okay, so we're not riding with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody's pissed off. And I think it's somehow, again, this just feels shitty to even recount, but like there were nice people in, I believe, Canada. See some Canadians that like took my drum set and went and dropped it off on the way home. which I don't even remember who that was.
I don't even remember that, but
kind of a multicolored van. And and it ended up in its destination somehow. It ended up being where it should be, which was amazing to think that happened. And I remember we ended up,
you ended up at Justin's house.
Well, yeah, but we ended up like riding with Andrew Bottomley, who at the time, actually he was on the cusp of doing Skyscraper magazine, which lasted a good long while, and it kind of had it was a blip in the whole magazine music culture as far as punk and indie rock goes, and it was pretty cool. But like I remember riding with him and his brother in a station wagon back down to San Diego, and yeah, we ended up staying at the 31G house, if you will, and my girlfriend annoyed the living shit out of everybody. I have nothing but completely embarrassing memories of that time because it was just...
I remember we got home and Joe was like, I talked to Thor the other day and they cannot stand her.
Yeah, it's horrible. She would clean their house.
Yeah, well, the thing that was funny is I think one of the stories was, I think it was Thor or possibly someone else. They came home from work, they fixed some ramen noodles for themselves. And, they strained the noodles and put the seasoning packet on, and they left the colander in the pot that they cooked the noodles in the sink. And she was very upset, living rent free at this place. She was very upset at the tenants who were paying rent. It was
ugly. It was ugly.
And here's the funny thing, just so real quick, I'm just we got in the vehicle. I think a couple of people, out of the kindness of their hearts, knowing that we were going to be very hurting for money to get home because we didn't have much. We had I think we got paid maybe $150 at the fest, which, that was cool. It was, but that's not going to get us, probably more than 1,000 miles, and we're, easily 2,000 miles from home.
Right.
Plus we got to try to find a way to eat. So, but some people, out of the kindness of their heart, bought some records from us. And I believe that Joel Wick, of all people, because he was at the fest, lent us $80 to get home.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we so we drove all the way to Wisconsin, and I think we basically rolled into Madison, Wisconsin on fumes. Graham's girlfriend gave us $50 to make it the rest of the way, I guess, which was actually more than enough in that day and age, because we were only really 4 hours from home at that point. But I just remember it being very just not awesome, knowing and the thing was so I was not as destroyed by it as Chris or Joe was. I was coming back home to some degree of stability. I had a girlfriend that I was kind of living with. Well, she was living in the group house I was living in. She actually moved out on her own, and I've got a place on my own too. But we so I had a small degree of stability compared to Joe. I don't think felt like he had much to come home to. It was just it's his relationship had ended before tour, and he didn't. None of us had jobs to come home to.
Yeah.
It was rough. My life was pretty okay-ish when I got back. I mean, I didn't have a band for the first time in a couple of years. I didn't have some people who I thought my friends were really kind of, it's sort of weird to say this, but kind of starfuckery-ish.
This was, yes.
In a very weird way. Cause it's we were people who played basements. We were not stars. I'm not trying, I don't want anyone to get the impression that I have this inflated impression of what I was or what I did.
Right.
But there were people that was like, oh, you're in a band that people seem to like and you do well, like, so we're friends,
Right.
And that kind of felt like a lot of those people fell by the wayside, and that was a bummer.
Yep.
But after I think I was home for a month or two, and things really started going south with my girlfriend pretty quickly. Like we were happy to see each other, I think, for a couple of weeks, and then it was just like, yeah, this isn't working out. So then it came to the point where I was like, this girl that I was with left me, and she actually was dating someone that we all knew. I wouldn't call him a friend. I was on good terms with him up until that point, though. But like, it was like I was heartbroken. I didn't have any sort of outlet. I didn't have music. I didn't have a way to play music with my friends. Like, I think I sold my bass amp to pay rent, and then another month probably sold my bass to pay rent. And, everything just kind of fell apart. I ended up paying rent at my house that I was living in for a few months. While not living there, I was actually staying with my grandparents just because I didn't want to have to deal with seeing this girl I was with, out on the town with another guy, or just in general seeing her. It was too painful at that point in my life to deal with. So, yeah, it all kind of, it felt okay, not good, but it didn't feel terrible, I think, in the way that it felt for you, Joe, or Chris, almost immediately. It was something that sort of was a slow burn for me. And then I befriended the dudes in Race Trader, and I ended up, I hung out with them. I went with Agna Marine's Autobiography to play a fest in Hamilton, Ontario, around New Year's Eve. And I ended up spending most of my time hanging out with the Race Trader dudes, and actually rode back with them from Canada. And I don't know. I had basically, at some point, I would call them on a regular basis, and their guitar stand's like, hey, I have a proposition for you. Why don't you move into our apartment in Logan Square? And so that's what I did, and then I ended up playing in Race Trader for a brief period, but that didn't really work out. Like, we were all very used to playing music with people where it was like a very intimate sort of situation, like we were like family, and we dealt with each other's shit. I went from that to being in a band where it was like, you're hard to be around, and you're not practicing the riffs, so you're kind of sloppy on your playing. Like, you're out of the band, basically,
Yeah.
And I don't blame them for that. It was just that I went from one thing to a complete different thing,
Yeah.
in terms of, not only in terms of music, but in terms of like the way the dynamics of relationship dynamics were,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and what's funny? I mean, we should probably end this pretty quick now, but like, all of this shit, every single one of these things that happened, like, it felt like it was a long period of just downers.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think this whole thing lasted for more than a year or two. Like, so we broke up in 96, summer of 96. Yeah. You moved to Colorado briefly.
I moved just a brief synopsis. We were stuck in San Diego for about a month. We met somebody that was doing a rideshare program that I can't remember who it was. His name was Eric. I can't remember his last name. I believe he lived in Chicago. So he did this rideshare thing where somebody needed their van driven from San Diego or wherever, somewhere in southern SoCal, to Chicago. So that was our best bet. So we, after annoying the shit out of everybody at the 31G house, we got in a van with this guy, made a few stops on the way, and ended up in Chicago, where I had my friends come pick us up. And I stayed in Michigan and lived on Mountain Dew and Snickers ice cream bars for about a month or two at my friend John's house.
Yeah.
and just try to forget everything. And then at that time, like my girlfriend's parents were having a divorce, and her mom had family in Colorado, so they moved to Colorado. So I ended up going to Colorado as well. So yeah, that's how
that. But that didn't it didn't last long.
It didn't last long because
it was like 96, and I believe that like we had worked out things enough to where like we actually saw each other. Like you came visiting me at my apartment in Chicago, I want to say in 98.
Oh yeah, no, this was still like 96 and stuff like that. Yeah. Then this happened. I was like stuck in Michigan for a while, back and forth here and there, and I ended up going back to my parents' house. And at that point, my parents had moved to Georgia because my dad had to. He worked for the FCC, and that branch in Michigan was closing down, so he was forced to move to Georgia. So I moved down there, and then for some reason, I went up to see you in Chicago, and hung out. And I mean, yeah, I think we're skipping ahead a little bit, but like, yeah, it was back and forth. Long story short, obviously the relationship I was in crashed and burned spectacularly, to the point of where I lost my drum set that I used in that band, which amongst all of my possessions, quite honestly. And there was a lot of just bouncing from Colorado to Georgia to Phoenix to Georgia, and eventually I went to college and yada yada. But yeah, Rich and I did get back on good terms. I remember we wrote a few letters back and forth to each other, and
yeah, and I was never really like, I mean, I never was quite as like, I mean, I certainly was pissed off that we weren't able to finish the tour, but I wasn't like, I was never like, I'm not going to talk to that motherfucker ever again. No, and I don't think any of us were. I think that even Joe said,
honestly,
while we were driving back home, like that he wanted to make good with you, but he felt like it wasn't going to happen until she was gone, to be honest.
Right. And yeah, and it was when I was back in Michigan, I was in Kalamazoo for a while. Me and my friend John lived in Kalamazoo in some shitty house. And I would go to the records, or go to Radio Kilroy back when it was over there. And I think Autumn worked there.
That's my ex-girlfriend.
And she was like, Joe wants to talk to you, and she would like give me his number and stuff, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I should have, but I couldn't. But I guess postscript to that is I did end up writing him, and he did end up sending me an Agnes Martin's autobiography and Bottom's Lullaby 7-inch, and he did send me a probably coveted cassette of him doing some weird stuff too. I still have it.
Yeah.
Solo stuff. And so I did talk to him on the phone one time for a good while.
Well, so just as a wrap up on all this shit, like, so I ended up doing Race Trader and then multiple other bands. I eventually ended up living in Washington, D.C. for 7 years, and my life was still not done falling apart. And here I am in Louisville and have been for the past like 12 or 13 years. And I'm happily married and blah, blah, blah. And at some point I will be playing music with my buddies again once we're not in the middle of a plague. But Joe, after this breakup, he pretty quickly bounced back in terms of music, and he ended up in he founded Agnes Martin's Autobiography, which was two of the dudes from Bev Clone and our friend Jim, and then this dude Adam, who was in So Grey, which at some point we're going to talk to him about Agnes Martin. Him and Ben of Agnes Martin will tell funny stories, because that band is the funniest band to have ever existed. But yeah, so he did. That's the last thing musically that Joe did of any. Like he did. I think he became. Well, I know Joe was a writer. Last I knew, he's living in L. Actually, I know he's still living in L.A. And that's what he does. He has a kid. Chris, all of you know, he went on to multiple bands. He He was in The Crimson Curse. He was in Tristeza.
Some Girls, briefly.
Yes, he was in Some Girls. That's so crazy to think about that he was in Some Girls. And he's now in a band. I can't remember their names. Kind of angular post-punk. It's really good. Goddamn.
Naked Lights.
Naked Lights. Yes, he's, as far as I know, currently still in a band called Naked Lights. Him and I still talk from occasion to occasion. I have absolutely nothing but love for every single member of Konstantin Zincati.
I did see Chris in 98 when he was playing with Tristeza, and I did tune his guitar for him.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, this is just I guess, this podcast, at least this series of it, we'll be probably talking to some of our other friends to talk about their stuff, or also their takes on what we were doing, for that matter, because I feel like that would be interesting. But this is an end to a very significant chapter in our lives, and it's kind of good to get it recorded, simply because we're getting older, and I think that there's people who want to hear stories about ridiculous emo core bands from the Midwest.
Quite honestly,
there was a lot of us.
I'm not trying to get maudlin on this, still, but there was not closure to this.
No.
That was not enough.
This is the most closure we've ever had.
Yeah, we tried to get our discography on vinyl. That was an absolute disaster. I'm not going to get into it, but that was not closure enough. We were supposed to do a reunion at fucking, was it Gilman?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're supposed to do a fucking reunion in Gilman. That didn't end up happening at the very last minute. So this is as close as we can possibly get to some semblance of closure as far as this band is concerned.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But
I think it's,
I'm glad that we got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite honestly, after the reunion fell through, and we were bummed out. Rich and I had hours and hours of discussion about this time. I was a dog walker at the time, so I had plenty of time to be on the phone, and we would just forever talk about this stuff, and really it was therapy. We really had some deep conversations about all this stuff. And that obviously we're not going to recount, but
I took some of my time that I'd taken off for vacation to go to the Bay Area and play a fest at Gilman. I ended up going up to Chicago, and we took a day trip to Milwaukee and went record shopping. But
which was nice.
So All right, signing out.
All right, bye. Thanks.
Bye.